History is often defined by the conflict between ideological constraint and economic opportunism. Nations define their strategic interests, draw rigid lines, and implement systems meant to enforce those boundaries. But commerce is fluid. It seeks the path of least resistance. When political systems create high walls, the pressure of global capital accumulates, searching for a profitable exit. This is the story of how America's rigid national security framework, designed to contain the rise of a technological rival, was fundamentally reshaped, not by a foreign adversary, but by a domestic commercial negotiation. It is the moment export control transitioned from a mechanism of prohibition to a lucrative revenue stream. The cost of strategic denial suddenly became a price tag, and that price tag was 15%.
The existing order was established in 2022. Facing China's rapid advances in artificial intelligence, the Biden administration deployed the most powerful tool available: export controls. The goal was simple, yet profound: deny China access to the most advanced AI training chips, specifically the flagship accelerators produced by American giants like Nvidia and AMD. This system, enforced by the Bureau of Industry and Security, was based on technical thresholds. It was complex, involving sophisticated tiered licensing and performance density limits. But the principle was clear: chips capable of accelerating military or strategic AI development were prohibited. For a time, the system held, but the pressure of the market remained relentless. Nvidia and AMD, facing the sudden closure of a multi-billion-dollar market, understood the rules of the system. They began adapting, not by challenging the rules, but by designing around them. They engineered new silicon, downgraded in specific ways, to comply with the letter of the law, while still serving the vast commercial demand.
The focus of this structural pressure became the H20 chip. Developed by Nvidia, this component was strategically weakened for AI training, yet it remained far superior to any Chinese domestic alternative. To the semiconductor companies, it represented billions in potential revenue. But despite its downgrades, the H20 still required a new high-stakes license to enter China. The traditional licensing process remained a bureaucratic and potentially punitive bottleneck. Enter the central actor, the executive branch, personified by President Donald Trump. In the late 2024 political calendar, traditional rules of governance yielded to the transactional approach of deal-making. The semiconductor constraint was suddenly reframed, not as a national security blockade to be upheld, but as leverage to be monetized. The catalyst was a meeting between the president and Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang. The market needed access. The administration wanted revenue. The conditions were ripe for a disruptive bargain.
The negotiation was precise and ruthless. Reportedly, the initial demand from the president was a 20% cut of the revenue generated by these specific chip sales. The final agreement settled upon 15%. This was the moment the rules changed. The price for obtaining the necessary export license was fixed, not through regulatory compliance, but through a direct revenue share agreement paid to the US Treasury. This agreement unlocked the Chinese market. It allowed Nvidia to project sales of millions of H20 chips, generating billions in annual revenue for the company, and an estimated $3.45 billion annually for the US government. This was a profound strategic shift, celebrated by supporters as bold pragmatism. Critics immediately pointed to the functional capability of the H20. While restricted for training, the H20 was exceptionally powerful for AI inference, the operational deployment of trained models. This meant the deal, while generating short-term revenue, still fueled China's immediate AI deployment capabilities. The government was collecting a commission on the very technology it claimed to restrict for security reasons.
The legal and strategic blowback was immediate and severe. Legal experts argued the payment structure was a clear violation of the export clause of the Constitution, which prohibits taxes or duties on exports, and the Export Controls Reform Act, which prohibits fees for licenses. The administration, however, insists the 15% is neither a tax nor a fee, but a voluntary revenue share component of a negotiated deal. The ambiguity remains untested, as the primary beneficiaries, Nvidia and AMD, have no incentive to challenge the arrangement in court. Strategically, critics saw the agreement as a capitulation. Former National Security Council experts argued that prioritizing a financial gain, estimated to be a fraction of 1% of the federal budget, over the bedrock principle of technology containment set a catastrophic precedent. This was not an isolated event. It was contextualized alongside other high-level executive brokered deals, signaling a transition toward governance by negotiation. The precedent was so appealing to certain figures that former Treasury advisor Scott Bessent publicly suggested expanding this transactional model to other restricted sectors, such as aerospace or biotech.
The agreement marks a decisive transition from institutional control to transactional governance. Export controls ceased being a hard barrier enforced by rules, becoming instead a monetized asset subject to executive discretion. The consequences ripple outward, creating deep uncertainty for allies who relied on America's principled stance. For China, the deal ensures a short-term supply of powerful, necessary inference chips, accelerating their immediate AI deployment. But it simultaneously confirms their fundamental vulnerability, strengthening Beijing's long-term resolve to achieve technological self-sufficiency. The revenue share agreement fuels China's AI ecosystem, even as it funds the US Treasury. Power remains locked in a cycle of competition and calculated risk. The essential ambiguity of the deal persists. Is the payment truly a fee for compliance, a penalty for success, or simply the opening move in a new, more mercenary form of international commerce? The answer is not yet written, but the mechanism has been proven. The price of access has been established, and in the cycle of global competition, that price will only rise.